Who we are today is the sum total of all of the years of who we were. Would you agree?
Yes.
Well, in that case, you might be surprised at how I turned out. Because if you could have been there when I was a child, you might have seen, "You're so stupid you can't even tie your shoes, you must be a baby." And now you're thinking, "Oh, poor cute little Norm, someone's saying those mean things to him." Well, you'd be half right. The cute little Norman part. Because that was me saying those awful words to my 4-year-old little sister Mary. I don't know how many times I made her cry. Guess I was a bully. How do you like me now, Madam Toastmaster? Fellow Toastmasters? I understand that bullies become bullies for various reasons. For me, it was to fight off racism. Because I looked different than 99% of the kids in my school. I looked Japanese, and they didn't. Although it was several years after World War II, there was still a lot of prejudice going on in the area where we lived. And some of the kids in school called me those insensitive names used to refer to the Japanese. I felt like an outsider, like I didn't belong. I felt like crawling into a shell. And I may have crawled into a shell if not for another stereotype of the day. Back then, if you were Japanese, kids thought you automatically knew this mysterious fighting style called karate. And in the second grade, some boys came up and said, "So you know karate?" Well, I didn't. So I was just trying to be funny, and I did this. But they did this. And it wasn't long before I was known as Norman the Killing Machine. And I used it to my advantage, because those insensitive racial comments were just so painful. In order to avoid them, I became a despicable bully. And it got worse year after year. And I was at the peak of bullyhood in the 6th grade, and there was James Ryan at recess, bouncing one of those red rubber balls. I walk up to him and give him the look. "Give me the ball, James." He just stands there and looks at me as if to say, "Not today." What else could I do? I give him the push. And I can still picture it. A beautiful day without a cloud in the sky. And I could see the sky quite clearly from my vantage point, lying flat on my back. Turns out James didn't have to pretend he knew karate. He reaches down to help me up, and I start to cry in front of all my classmates. This time I did crawl into a shell because I didn't know who I was once again. Thankfully, I would discover who I was because of Mary and our neighbor, Fred. After school, I overhear Mary watching TV in the other room, and you might recognize the program. "It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor." And she sees me coming, so she quickly gets up, changes the channel to Looney Tunes. "I thought you were watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood." She looks at me, forces a smile, and says, "Mr. Rogers is a baby show, and I'm not a baby." But behind her smile, deep within her eyes, I see a real look of fear. A look that I was all too familiar with. But seeing it in her eyes was more painful than James's karate kick to my gut, because it reminded me of who I was, and how awful a brother, and classmate, and a person I was. I changed the channel back to Mr. Rogers. "It's all right, Mary, we'll watch Mr. Rogers together." And as I sit next to her, she gives me a look with the biggest beaming smile, and a look in her eyes that I'd never seen before. And I liked it, because for the first time, I could see who I was. And we spent many afternoons watching Mr. Rogers together. I thought he was talking directly to me when he said, there is only one you, and people will like you exactly the way you are. And I knew he was talking directly to me when he said the words that would shape the rest of my life. He said those who would try to make you feel smaller than you are is the true evil. True evil. Me. But I couldn't go back and reverse the pain that I had caused to so many. But consider this. The pearl in an oyster starts out as an irritant at the core. And year after year, the oyster repairs itself by laying down a protective, iridescent layer over that irritant, until finally, years later, what we get is the beautiful pearl. Well, what if I could bury my dark history in the center of a pearl of my own making? After all, if we will ultimately be measured by the sum total of all of our years, then I can start to layer kindness upon friendship, upon loyalty, upon compassion, upon respect, upon selflessness, upon love, year upon year, until finally my dark center is just the unseen of a beautiful life. And I say, it's never too late. That is how I choose to live the rest of my life. What about you? Do you have something in your past that you're not proud of? Surround it with a lifetime of good. Lock it within your pearl. Because, ladies and gentlemen, who we are tomorrow will be shaped by who we are and what we do today.